The new War of the Worlds movie was released and immediately dropped to 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. There are people out there calling this the worst movie ever made, but am I one of them? No, I'm not. It is really bad and in need of examination, absolutely. Come with me and we'll talk about how something like this goes about happening, what went wrong, and what we as filmmakers can learn about this to apply to our own projects. What's so interesting about War of the Worlds is that it has been a landmark piece in two different venues immediately at the start. The original book, written by H.G. Wells in the 1890s, was thought of as the first story of alien invasion, and Wells, for his work, is thought of as the father of science fiction. 40 years later, a 23-year-old Orson Welles would launch himself into the national spotlight when his acting troupe performed the piece as if it were a breaking news radio segment, which startled some people. It's not really clear how many people were startled, but the fact that it became so well known for that made this radio broadcast famous. In the 70 some odd years since then, there have been many different adaptations of the War of the Worlds concept, each of them focusing on a more contemporary time and American setting, to varying results. Most notably, there was a movie in 1953 and another by Spielberg in 2005 that are thought of as the high watermark for the adaptations of the novel. This version of War of the Worlds, much like the other ones that came before, bases itself in America and uses more contemporary technology and time. Right about now, I think many of you imagine that I am going to take this opportunity and kick the dead horse as well. Oh boy, can't wait to see how Cory rips this one apart. Unfortunately, that's not the way I'm choosing to take this one. I don't do Hallmark movies on this channel, and I certainly don't rate them compared to Oscar nominees and big budget tentpole movies because they literally are not the same thing. Likewise, I don't make it a habit to pick apart low budget backyard horror movies because it's not the same thing. This movie, despite the fact that it has a Universal logo at the beginning, is certainly not good. However, I think the most valuable thing that we can do in this review is talk about how certain lessons can be learned and applied to our work. So to set this up, Ice Cube plays a high-ranking member of the National Security Administration, but seems to spend most of his time spying on his adult-age children through various methods not limited to tracking them on private and public security cameras, hacking into their computers, and commandeering drones to surveil them. This entire movie basically plays out almost entirely in Ice Cube's workspace from the perspective of his webcam, with various Zooms and FaceTimes being used to bring other people to the computer screen. Because the action is things that are on the computer. The editing style is very similar to the POV of someone on the computer bouncing around between various apps and notifications. We learn that 4 years earlier, Ice Cube's wife and the kid's mother passed away and is used as a reasoning for why he is so locked in on watching his kids using the NSA clearance. At the same time, there are severe weather events happening all around the globe that act as an opening salvo to a rain of hundreds of meteors spraying all across Earth's surface. The NSA is clearly playing a part in gathering information about these meteors, but when we find out the meteors are actually Martian vessels that came to life and begin to attack the world's information systems, it becomes a race to find a way to stop it before life as we know it is over. Which leads us to the first two things that stand out the most about this movie, which is the acting and the writing. Unfortunately for the acting, the problem is that the lead role was miscast. I feel bad for Ice Cube in this movie because he is bringing exactly what he does in all his roles, which in the right movie is great. Unfortunately, watching him in this feels like SNL sketch where the different actors try out for Jurassic Park, all talented in their own way, but horribly suited for a role in Jurassic Park. Like Al Pacino doing the Welcome to Jurassic Park, Al Pacino in the right role can be sensational, but the joke is he's not right for this movie, and the movie is not right for him. The so bad it's good of the movie largely comes from Ice Cube hearing some tragic news and mean mugging into his webcam like no big deal, or giving a characteristic line reading when it doesn't match the emotion a normal person would feel in that moment. All of this is not helped by the writing, which doesn't put people on screen in a position to succeed. But again, like Ice Cube, I don't blame the writers for what they turned in because this format requires something so exceptional to break free of its own intentionally narrowed worldview. When you can't have Ice Cube go on a journey of any kind, or have any physical interactions with another person. It means you have to tell a story that is so much better than just a normal movie. You are forcing yourself to transcend to succeed, which is risky business if your intention is to be a big studio movie with a release in theaters. Imagine you and I are at a track and field competition, and we happen upon a pole vault, and the bar is set to the world record height of 20 feet 7 inches. I look at you, I pick up the pole, and say simply, "Watch me." My old fat ass rumbles down the track and plants the pole in the ground. The question is, how high do I have to go to impress you? Because if I get 15 feet in the air, it might be impressive and more than you expected. But by doing it with such a high bar makes me worse in comparison. Much the same as if I tried to do it with a pool cue. If the same thing happened, you, me, track and field, pole vault, watch me, but this time there was no bar, my 15-foot jump would be amazing in that context. I could hold a record if we lived in certain states. That is a story about why you shouldn't set such a high bar for yourself unless you are positive you can clear it. The main lesson I would learn from this is that we come into this with the best of intentions, but sometimes things just don't work. As much as studios and investors would like, there is no guarantee with any project if the alchemy isn't there. In sports, you see it all the time with super teams loaded with stars. Fans wonder how anyone is going to beat this loaded squad. But then injuries happen, bad luck, good effort that usually leads to success being met with exceptional opposition. There is no secret to success except for putting together as many pieces as you can to service the picture. I was watching this movie and said, the pitch must have been incredible. The pitch is the moment that you're in the room with the studio and you pitch the idea of the movie and you find out if it's a go picture or a pass. It's the moment when everything is possible, and clearly at a weird time for the industry and the world. This movie was shot during COVID when almost no production was happening, and it was done in a way that could be COVID safe, when studios didn't really know how to make a movie like they usually did with uncertain headwinds. It would have so many pieces line up to make the studio say yes, with perhaps the highest on the list being that you could have a thrilling sci-fi movie with bankable stars for a budget that could rival an episode of Prestige TV. So you have this interesting sandbox. You brought in Ice Cube and Eva Longoria. You have great That Guys and Clark Gregg and Michael O'Neill. Andrea Savage gets some run. And some promising young actors in Amon Benson, Henry Hunter Hall, and Devon Bostick. Going in, you have to feel confident that this could really work out. But once you get on the road, you start noticing problems in the car. Mostly being that this type of acting with two people being in separate spaces is naturally awkward and something that needs to be overcome by the actors. That's where the shortfalls of the script come into sharper focus because there is so much confusion about the vision of the world. By using the American spy apparatus to follow your family members, saying it's for their safety, when it didn't detect anything. Using excessive corporate branding to the point that there is probably a separate app or logo in every minute of this movie, being blind to the idea that the very corporations you use effectively advertisements are also responsible in large part to the vast consumption of personal data for evil ends. It gets to the point where no director, no cast would ever be able to make it work in a way that was considered good. Part of why this movie is so interesting is because this movie feels like Universal saw an early cut and quickly realized they were in big trouble. This was not going to work as a theatrical experience, and it was going to lose money even at an assumed light budget. Things that gave me clues to this is how unacceptably poor the CGI in this movie is, because it almost gave the impression of previs art. There are CGI artists who worked on this movie, and I feel bad that this is being presented in this condition because it looks like they were told to stop before they were finished. It is the shoddiness of AI, which I wouldn't be surprised if they used during this movie. But even the phrase, "it looks like AI," is a code word for it's too unnatural looking. I'm not trying to kick a dead horse, but it looked like Animorphs level effects at times. Here's the thing about this movie. I know 20 people, at least, that would turn on Prime to see what's on and click on War of the Worlds because they heard something about it, but they can't remember what. Maybe they see Ice Cube, like the Spielberg flick, whatever the reason. A good number of people are going to click on this that have no idea this movie is getting dragged on the internet. I bet you a lot of them are doing it while like hanging out with their kids or doing laundry, eating, or checking Instagram. However they watch movies, they will probably enjoy it. Because at the end of the day, the movie itself is not offensive or the worst thing ever made or anything like that. It's just a movie that didn't have the script to succeed or the star that works for the movie you were making. For the engaged cinephile, I think it's time that we start to find the positive-facing affectation that we use to classify movies. Because even though the movie is bad, I really think there is something redeeming about it if people knew what they were walking into. Right now, this is a Universal movie that was on the shelf for 5 years, and when it finally was heard from again, it's being shown on Amazon Prime. Back in the day, this would have been a straight-to-DVD/video situation. It's a movie that cost some money to make, so you flood Walmart $5 bins with it and hope the same people who would stumble upon it on Prime would see it in the bin the same way. If I bought this movie on a DVD at Walmart or a gas station, I would enjoy it. Something that slid to streaming and on a service the studio doesn't own makes this movie sound worse than it is. Is it the end of the world or is it the Leaderboard? Guess what? I'm not doing it. The same reason I wouldn't take this scale and rate an episode of The Bear or Hallmark's Mountain Town for Christmas or Ernest Goes to Gitmo, and I certainly wouldn't do it to this one. Two of the things I mentioned as examples aren't even real, but they could be, and the same thing could be said about this movie. 15 years from now, you can tell people Ice Cube was in War of the Worlds, and they won't believe you. That is the level this movie is operating on. The CGI should be a crime, but everything else is hitting the dartboard and not the bullseye. It's not good, but it's also not worth all the hate. I was angrier with blockbusters on the real Leaderboard than I was with this one. Thank you so much for watching. I apologize for being late on this review, but I was busy on set all weekend, and it kind of threw my plans for a loop. If this got you hungry for more, check out this video right here. And thank you so much for watching.